Gene, the Committee to Protect the Freedom of Speech is really dedicated to supporting the right of all American citizens to express themselves through the passage of a piece of legislation that we're working on, that we've been talking to Congress about passing, the Fair Treatment for All Gifts Act. And the IRS is trying to, I think, in some respects, threaten people and trying to say we're going to be selective about who we tax, or we're going to tax anything that's given over $12,000. Well, there's two problems with that. One, you freeze if Gene wants to give $25,000 to the Red Cross or Families for Sickle Cell or any other charitable organization out there. He says, okay, I'm not going to give over $12,000 because anything I give over that is not deductible. So I'm not going to give over $12,000. So you don't get the tax relief, and the charitable organization, they lose $13,000 that you intended to give, but you said, well, anything over 12, it's not deductible. So, and the second thing, Gene, the IRS doesn't make those determinations about who gets to write off what or who gets the charitable deduction. That's a congressional responsibility. It's not an administrative responsibility, but it's kind of how the administration has operated over the last 6 years, to say that we're not going to act as a president or administration. We're going to act like a king, and it's just not the right way to do business.
We're talking about 85,000 such organizations like you were talking about, and we're not talking about big charities. We're talking about your local community charities, whether it's your Kiwanis Club or your VFW Hall. These are organizations that, if they come across a donor that really wants to help them, they have to jump on it, because then they're not going to see money like this ever again, right, J.C.?
No question, Gene. Bingo. And or it could be your local church or your local synagogue. It could be some faith organization that you give money to. I think, Gene, what was happening here is that on people on the right and people on the left, they give to charitable organizations, and I think it was probably there was some intent to say we're gonna freeze or we're gonna stifle the giving by these big political donors to charitable organizations, trying to cut their legs out from under them some kind of way. But the fact is, you don't hurt. If you got a donor that can give $100,000, I don't care if he's on the right or if he's on the left or if he's in the middle. If you've got someone that's willing to give $100,000 to a local charity, your local church, your local Red Cross, what happens is they say, okay, we'll give this end of the year. It's a good cause. We'll get a tax deduction for it, so we'll give them $100,000. But under the scenario that we're trying to eliminate, and the bill that we're working on says, no. You're going to get a deduction for whatever you should get. We're not going to stop it at $12,000. So it really does make sense. It's fair for everybody. All American citizens will be treated the same. We've got a very broad coalition of folks. Very seldom do you see, Americans for Prosperity or the Congress of Racial Equality and, the ACLU in the same bed together. But that's how I think how civil this legislation is, to say, let's not allow the IRS to determine who gets a deduction. Let's have Congress move on this. The only fair and unbiased system is one that recognizes that all organizations that follow nonprofit guidelines, they should be treated as such, nonprofit, and they would qualify for the contribution.
J.C., as I'm learning more and more about this topic, I see that there's bipartisan support that you talk about in your article that appears on rollcall.com. But the thing that's striking me the most here is okay, I'm going to put my lawyer hat on for a second, because that's what I do in my real life. It seems like this $12,000 setting is kind of arbitrary, and the IRS should not be the IRS should be the scalpel making the decision, like a doctor would be, but the doctor makes the decision on how to use the scalpel. You know what I mean? Why is Congress abdicating their responsibilities to the executive branch, and specifically to an unelected IRS?
Well, Gene, I'm not an attorney, but I would ask that same question, and that's why we're talking to Congress about this, to say, hey, we've seen the administration overreach in terms of immigration, regardless of what a person thinks about immigration or legal immigration or securing the border. Put all that aside. Is that something that should be decided through the administration, or should that be decided by members of Congress? Not by executive order, but by members of Congress. Anybody would say that it should be done by members of Congress. This is the same type of circumstance that says, Congress, step up to the plate, do what the American people elected you to do, and take this out of the hands of the IRS and put it in the hands of the American people. Not some bureaucrat, but put it in the hands of the representatives, the 435 House members and the 100 senators, and send it to the president and let the president say yay or nay. I agree with it, or I don't agree with it. But no, that's a perfectly honest, logical question. Congress should deal with this, and again, we've offered up the Fair Treatment to All Gifts Act, which is the legislation that we're asking Congress to deal with.
And I'm glad that this is being put forward. I'm glad that you found people in Congress who are willing to act like congressmen and actually do their job. It's definitely a step in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, J.C., it doesn't matter what party alignment you have at this point. The people that are being hurt by this the most are the people who are in need of the services of these charitable organizations. Most of the time, it's disadvantaged communities, right?
That's right. Gene, you could have a homeless shelter. You could have soup kitchens that qualify for this, as you mentioned earlier. Your local Kiwanis Club or VFW. I give money to my church, and Gene, quite frankly, even if I didn't get a write-off, I would honestly still give to my church. I believe that we are mandated to help and assist those, the least of these. And those are the people that's really going to get hurt, those veterans and the homeless and those who need, a couple of hot meals every day, or your local Kiwanis Club or Rotary Club that does great work in Africa surrounding the polio issue that the Rotary Club does. So it's a lot of good organizations out there. The IRS shouldn't arbitrarily say that, hey, anything over $12,000, it's not deductible. If Gene is willing to give whatever you're willing to give, some people, it does encourage them, and it is an inducement because they get a write-off, and we think everybody should be treated fairly. And again, it's the Fair Treatment for All Gifts Act that takes the IRS out of the position of determining tax policy.
Absolutely. And the other thing that this does is that it stops big government, because when charities fall by the wayside, government's going to be the one to step in, and everybody wants to have control where their money is going and support charities like this. If government's around taking their place, it's not a good situation for anyone, and it just trickles down in a negative way to those people we were just talking about. J.C., tell everybody how they can get in touch with you and support H.R. 1104 if you want people to write their congressman and all that, and also to support you in all your endeavors.
Well, Gene, I would encourage anyone listening, I would encourage them to take a look at the legislation, the Fair Treatment for All Gifts Act. This is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democrat issue, as I said earlier. Americans for Prosperity, that would be relating obviously to the right. Then we've got the 60 Plus Association, Congress of Racial Equality, and then we've got, a coalition of organizations, including that includes the ACLU in the coalition. So that's a pretty broad swath of people from left to right that is supportive of what we're trying to accomplish. And so, if you go to the Committee to Protect Free Speech.com, again, that's the Committee to Protect Free Speech.com, and that'll give you a little more insight on who we are and what we're doing. And we would love for people to call their members of Congress and say, why are you not supporting this, or are you supporting this? And at the end of the day, if they're not, we would hope that they would be encouraged to do so.
It's a rare pleasure to get to talk about something that actually has bipartisan support, and it's a rare pleasure to talk to you, J.C. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, Gene, you're very kind to have me on. Thank you, sir.
And it was our pleasure to interview and host former Oklahoma Congressman J.C. Watts. Go to the Committee to Protect Free Speech.com. It's a lot of words, but it's worth going to, folks. The Committee to Protect Free Speech.com. And you know what? We always like to advocate for yourself here behind enemy lines, because nobody's going to do it better than you. Nobody knows your life better than you, right? No politician, no boss, no family member. Your life is your own. So why not take control of it? Go out and read H.R. 1104. See if you believe what J.C. Watts and I believe, and that is that we know what to do best with our money. And we believe that private charity is better than government. Let's not limit giving, especially in this time of year. The season of giving is almost upon us. Let's take control, support those organizations that support your communities in the way that you see fit, not the way some pencil pusher at the IRS sees fit. And do you see the connection a little bit from what we were talking about earlier with Paris and foreign policy, folks? It's a little hard to see, but let me bring it to you real quick. Government is saying that we know better. Government's always saying that we know better than you do. That's not true. Government cannot step into your shoes and deal with your 9 to 5. Government cannot step into your shoes and deal with the decisions you have to make with your family. And government sure doesn't know how to spend money properly and efficiently. You do. You know best for you in your life. So why not take control of it? And in this sense, take control of it by reading H.R. 1104. It's the right thing to do, folks. Find something you're passionate about and just go with it. And I hope you're passionate about your own personal welfare and the decisions that you make financially in your life. Before we take our next break, and it's going to be the Al Sharpton break that everybody loves, also from the Washington Free Beacon, I want to thank everybody for listening to this edition of Behind Enemy Lines Radio. I'm Gene Baradelli, and while I got you listening, please go check out www.behindenemylines.radio.us. That's the blog for this site, for our show, I should say. That's the blog for our show. And while we got you on the internet, check us out on social media. We're on the Facebooks and the Twitters at BEL_radio. And while you're also surfing the net, check out the place where this show was born. And we came from the Brooklyn Young Republicans at www.brooklynYRS.com. We're going to take our last break here before we head into the next topic. We're going to be talking about the Syrian refugee crisis, folks. Everybody's got a lot of opinions on this. We'll be perusing some of them, and I'll give you my own, which may surprise you. Gene Baradelli, Behind Enemy Lines, will be back after giving some equal time to the Reverend Al Sharpton. The show will be right back. But first, a word from Al Sharpton.
Good evening, Rev. Thanks Good evening, to Rev. You, Ed. Is this Groundhog Day 2? We are watching that was Attorney General Eric Holder, ABDs, about some Republicans at home are already beating the drums of war. Today, the Pentagon refuted that